Hello amazing leaders, and welcome to day 34 of the amazing 90-day challenge. Excuse me. Right, today's question is one I get asked a lot, and it is how to start a podcast. So what I wanted to do was sort of really streamline it down to my top 3 tips and incorporate sort of a lot of the questions I get asked at the same time. So the first thing that you need to do is to find a simple platform that you can use, and ideally one that you can use on the go, one that's across multiple devices, which most of them are now, but just check that whichever one you go for, it can be used on your phone, on your tablet, on your computer, whatever it might be, so that you can record whenever you need to record, because it's not always that you can sort of plan what you might want to say or do, or someone you might meet. So it might be that because you haven't set it up in that way and it's only on your computer at home or in the office, that you've missed an opportunity. So find a platform that you can use on the go, one that can be used and be able to record anywhere. The other thing is to not overthink it and to not spend too much on it, especially to start with. You don't need a full recording studio and a production team and a director and an editor and everything else like that. Right now it's just me by myself. I'm recording this on my iPhone for the social media side of it. So this is being recorded on Facebook Live. I'm going to take that video and then I'm going to push it out onto some other Facebook groups. I'm going to push it out onto my Instagram channel and also my YouTube channel as well, just from this one video that I'm doing. And at the same time, if you're listening to this on the Amazing Leaders podcast, I'm recording it on my iPad exactly the same time. So I'm multitasking in a good way, in a positive way, to be able to take the audio from that and this live that I'm doing and be able to purpose it for the podcast. All I do for the podcast is that I put some music at the beginning and at the end, and that's done all through the same platform, which I'm going to tell you what that is in a minute, so that you can simply record as you go. You start, play, you press record, and away you go. And it takes a little bit of time to get your head around it, like anything in life, but it isn't complicated. And you've got to just tell yourself that you're not a technophobe. You can learn how to do this. You might have to read some how-tos or ask some questions on the live chat for whatever it might be, or to ask other people and reach out and say, okay, I understand that it's not complicated, but how do you just start? And that's a lot of our fear around doing anything, especially trying to record a podcast that we put out there for the public. The other thing to remember is you don't have to release it. If you're not happy with it, you can push the delete button and you can start again, or you can just share it with a few friends before you release it to the world and see whether they think it's good enough to do that. So research which platform you want to use. Some are free, so there are some podcast platforms that you can use for free. Some you can upgrade later, so you can start with either a free platform or a smaller one, and then you upgrade as you go, as you get more podcasts, more followers, and you need more information behind all of what you're doing as well, like statistics and different things like that, even how you can make money out of recording a podcast. So the platform that I use is called Spreaker. That's spelt Spreaker, Spreaker, and I record that, like I said, directly onto my iPad, and then I do it once, I push a button to share it, and because I've registered, which was very simple to do, with iTunes and Spotify and YouTube and all the other different platforms that you can listen to podcasts from, it automatically pushes it out to all of those at a push of a button from my end here. So Spreaker starts from $7 a month, I think, for their basic platform, and then the intermediate one is $20 a month, which is the one I use, and then there's an advanced one as well that goes up even higher than that. So it might be worth just investing a little bit to start with, but I'm not getting paid from Spreaker for doing this. I'm just sharing what I use because I want to be honest and open with you, and I want you to be able to really kickstart what it is that you can share and how you can get your message out there, whatever that might be as well. And we'll talk maybe in another podcast about the different topics that I come up with and different topics that you could do a podcast on as well. So that's how to find a platform, maybe a free one, maybe one that you pay for. It doesn't hurt to have a bit of skin in the game, as they say, to spend a little bit of money on it to be able to make you really sure that you're interested in doing it. But if you can't afford it, then like I say, there are some free ones out there, so look at those as well. Okay, top tip number 2 is make sure you have the best audio that you can afford. And I'm talking about microphones and recording devices and things like that as well. Now, the technology behind iPads, iPhones and other smartphones as well has come on so much that the actual quality of the speakers and the microphones in each of those, and obviously the video as well now, are normally sufficient for what you're trying to do, especially when you start out. But if you're going out and about and it's windy, or you're trying to interview somebody and you've got one phone in between the two of you, the levels can be difficult to hear and different things like that. So it might be just worth investing again as much as you can afford to start with on some clip-on microphones that you can then plug directly into your iPhone or into your tablet or your iPad, so that it can really elevate the level of sound that you're recording whenever you're doing anything like that. We've all listened to something that has not been quite as good and as clear a sound quality, and it puts us off straight away. So make sure your environment is as clear as possible, as silent as possible. If that's possible, maybe your podcast is about messy life and everything, and that's fine as well, but make sure that people can hear what you say. Most people will forgive a video image not being as good. They won't forgive and they won't stick around if your audio quality isn't good enough for them to hear and they're missing every other word. Think of it like a conversation. If you only hear every other word or every third word of what somebody is saying, it's unlikely that you're going to be able to have a good level of communication with them. And that's what you're trying to do with a podcast, is communicate whatever it is you want to talk about to the other person and the other people listening on the other end. So make sure you do them the justice of the best audio that you can afford, and listen to it, make sure it's right, make sure you got the volumes right so that it's a nice even level throughout the whole podcast. People don't like being shocked when the noise goes up unexpectedly and things like that as well. Okay, top tip number 3, and I think this is probably the simplest one but also the hardest one that most people stumble on. And the top tip is simply just start. Most people want to do it and never get round to doing it. So commit to a date and then just go for it. And whatever it is, don't worry about the feedback. Typically when you start, there's not huge numbers of people listening. They're mainly your friends and family, so they're going to be nice to you and they're going to give you some good feedback. But just start. You all have a message. Everyone has a story. Everyone has something to add to the podcasting world and the social media world in a positive way. So commit to a date. If you wanted to do this for a long time, maybe this is the push for you to set your own 90-day challenge. And it doesn't have to be to record a podcast a day for 90 days, which is what my challenge was. But it might be that you start your podcast and actually you do a podcast a week for 90 days. So you've got 13 podcasts that you can release by the end of that 90-day challenge, and you're releasing them as you go. And another little tip within that tip of just starting is, if you can, try and release at least 3, if not 5 would be better at the beginning. So when people are listening to your podcast and they like it, they haven't got to wait a week for the next one. We're in this culture now of binge watching Netflix series and different types of programs that we like. We don't like to have to wait a whole week for another one. So at the start, if you can record 3 or 5 to be able to get people hooked on your message, on your podcast, so that they subscribe and come back to you, then that's a fantastic thing to be able to do. Yes, it might take a bit of time, but that time will be invested wisely because of the return you will get on that as well. So they're my top tips. Find a simple platform that you can use, one that ideally you can use on the go. Top tip number 2 is make sure you have the best audio that you can afford, the best microphones and recording devices that you're going to use. And top tip number 3 is just start. So when are you going to start? What are you going to do? Send me a message. I'd love to listen to your podcast. I'd love to hear what you've got to say. And I'm hoping that by me pushing you to just start will give you what you need to do to be able to go on to great things. And who knows, you might make money from it one day, which would be fantastic. Or you might be able to share an idea with somebody that inspires them to do something that they've always wanted to do in your niche as well. So I hope that's been helpful. I hope you'll have an amazing day. And remember, Why be average when you can be amazing?